Hello! In this video I show you how to replace your car's brake fluid using a vacuum bleeder. On the Mondeo, the service schedule indicates the brake fluid has to be changed once every 2 years. If you're not sure when your brake fluid was last changed, you can buy a simple tester. I'll put a link in the description below. The reason for changing the brake fluid is because it absorbs water over time, which reduces the efficiency of the brakes and reduces the boiling point of the fluid. The tester measures the amount of water in the fluid. Start by removing the old fluid from the reservoir using a syringe or something similar and top up with fresh, clean fluid. That way you're drawing new fluid into the system from the start of the process without having to bleed all the old fluid from the reservoir through the system. As a general rule of thumb, you start with the wheel furthest away from the master cylinder. So for the Mondeo, you start with the left hand rear, then move to the right hand rear, left hand front, and finally the right hand front. Loosen the wheel nuts before jacking up the car and removing the wheel. And always put the car on axle stands, never rely on the jack alone. Remove the dust cap from the bleed nipple and spray a bit of penetrating oil on it. Attach the pipe from the vacuum pump to the bleed nipple, connect the pump to the air line and then start the pump. Once the pump is running, then loosen the bleed nipple to allow the old fluid out of the system. It's a bit tricky to loosen the rear bleed nipple on the Mondeo with the pipe still on. In some cases, for some cars, you may need to remove the handbrake mechanism first. With the pump running, return to the front of the car and top up the brake fluid in the reservoir as it goes down. Obviously don't let the reservoir run dry, otherwise you'll be drawing air into the system. When you can see clean fluid coming through the other end, then tighten the bleed nipple with the pipe still connected and the pump still running. You can then remove the pipe and stop the pump. Repeat this process for all 4 wheels. Bleeding the calipers on the front of the Mondeo is easier than the rears because the bleed nipple is much more accessible. You should also find that the front calipers bleed quicker because obviously there's less distance and pipe work for the fluid to travel. With all 4 brakes bled, simply replace the wheels, top up the reservoir, and Bob's your uncle. When refitting the wheels, I like to put a bit of copper grease on the rims, just to make them easier to remove in future. And finally, with all the wheels back on and the car back on the floor, just double check the wheel nuts to make sure they're nice and tight.